feeling. The Juvenile Probation Services office occupies the third floor of a nondescript government building downtown. The waiting area is a study in institutional blandness, beige walls, uncomfortable plastic chairs, and outdated magazines scattered across a central table. A water cooler gurgles in the corner, providing the only sound besides the occasional click of the receptionist's keyboard. I arrived 10 minutes early for my appointment, as required by the terms of my probation. The receptionist, a middle-aged woman with horn-rimmed glasses who knows me by name, nods in acknowledgement as I sign in. "Ms. Chen will be with you shortly," she says, returning to her computer. I take a seat, pulling out the completed check-in form from my backpack. The form is straightforward, a record of my activities for the past week, confirmation of my attendance at school, and a section for any incidents or concerns. I've filled it out meticulously, knowing that even minor inconsistencies could trigger unwanted scrutiny. At precisely 4:30, the door to the inner offices opens, and Lin Chen emerges. She's in her early 30s, with a sleek bob haircut and the perpetually alert expression of someone who's heard every excuse in the book and believes none of them. According to my memories, she's been my probation officer since my release from juvenile detention 8 months ago, tough but fair, and genuinely invested in keeping me on the right path. "Megumi," she greets me with a professional nod. "Come on in." I follow her through the door and down a short hallway to her office. The space is small but efficiently organized, with a desk, 2 chairs, and filing cabinets along one wall. Unlike the waiting area, Ms. Chen has personalized her workspace with a few touches: a small plant on the windowsill, a framed diploma from the University of Michigan, and a calendar featuring national parks. "Have a seat," she says, gesturing to the chair across from her desk. "How was your week?" I hand her the check-in form as I sit down. "Fine. No issues." She scans the form quickly, her eyes moving methodically down the page. "School attendance is good. I see Mr. Washington signed off on your community service hours for last Saturday. And you're scheduled for another cleanup tomorrow." "Yes. 8 to noon at the community center." She makes a note in my file. "And how are things at home?" "Your uncle is working extra shifts this weekend." "He is. Night shifts at the hospital. But I'm staying at a friend's tonight, and I've got the cleanup tomorrow morning." "This friend would be?" she asks, though I'm certain she already knows the answer. "Ms. Chen is nothing if not thorough." "Mark Grayson," I reply. "And then on Sunday, I'm having dinner with his family." Something like approval flickers across her face. "The Graysons. Good. They're a stable influence." She closes my file and leans back slightly in her chair, studying me. "You've been consistent these past few months, Megumi. That's commendable." I nod, accepting the praise without comment. "How are you feeling about the upcoming transition?" she asks, shifting to a more personal line of questioning. "Your probation ends in 4 months. Have you given any thought to what comes next?" The question catches me off guard. What comes next? If the timeline follows the comics, what comes next is global catastrophe. Omni-Man's betrayal, the Viltrumite invasion, the reshaping of Earth's power structures. My personal plans seem laughably irrelevant in that context. But of course, Ms. Chen is expecting a normal teenager's response: thoughts about college, perhaps, or career aspirations. "I've been looking at pre-med programs," I say, drawing on Megumi's memories. "My uncle thinks I could get into state with my grades, maybe with a partial scholarship." She nods approvingly. "Medicine. Following in your uncle's footsteps." "Something like that. It's a good path. Demanding, but with your academic abilities and..." She pauses, choosing her words carefully. "Your unique perspective on human behavior, you could be successful." I suppress a smile at her diplomatic phrasing. My unique perspective, being that of someone who once ran with a street crew and has seen the darker side of humanity firsthand. "Have you discussed this with Dr. Levine?" She asks, referring to the therapist I apparently see bi-weekly. Not in detail, I admit. It's still just an idea. Well, I think you should. She can help you develop a concrete plan. Ms. Chen makes another note in my file. Speaking of Dr. Levine, your next appointment with her is Tuesday, correct? Yes. After school. Good. She closes the file decisively. Unless you have any concerns you'd like to discuss, I think we're done for today. Same time next Friday. I'll be here. She stands, extending her hand. Keep up the good work, Megumi. You're proving that people can change when they commit to it. I shake her hand, feeling a twinge of guilt at the deception. The real Megumi Fushiguro might indeed have changed, might have been working toward a better future. But I'm not him, and the future I'm preparing for is far different from what Ms. Chen envisions. The meeting concludes, and I head out of the government building into the late afternoon sunshine. William's house is a 20-minute walk from downtown, in a middle-class neighborhood of modest single-family homes with well-kept lawns. According to my memories, his parents are both teachers, his father at the local community college, his mother at an elementary school. When I arrive, William is already setting up the game system in his basement rec room, a comfortable space with a worn couch, a large TV, and shelves crammed with books, games, and collectible figures. How'd the probation thing go? He asks without looking up from the tangle of cords he's sorting through. Fine. Just the usual check-in. Cool. Mark texted, he'll be here in about half an hour. Something about helping his dad move furniture. William finally gets the system connected and turns to me with a grin. Want to practice before he gets here? I've already unlocked most of the characters. We spend the next hour immersed in the game, a fighting title featuring exaggerated versions of real-world heroes like the immortal and War Woman. It's strange seeing digital representations of people who, in this reality, actually exist, people who, if the timeline holds true, will soon be dead at Omni-Man's hands. Mark arrives eventually, letting himself in with the casual familiarity of a frequent visitor. He looks slightly disheveled, his hair windswept and his t-shirt wrinkled. Sorry I'm late, he says, dropping onto the couch beside me. Dad had me helping rearrange his study. The man has more books than a library. No problem, William says, passing him a controller. We've just been warming up. Megumi's already figured out all the cheap moves with Darkwing. Mark snorts. Of course he has. He always goes for the tactical advantage. I shrug, not denying it. From what I can gather from the memories, Megumi's approach to games, as with most things, is methodical and strategic, focused on efficiency rather than flash. Something we share in common, I suppose. The next few hours pass in a blur of virtual combat, pizza delivery, and the kind of easy banter that comes from years of friendship. Despite the surreal circumstances, I find myself genuinely enjoying the experience. There's something comforting about the simplicity of it all, 3 teenagers playing video games on a Friday night, with no immediate concerns beyond who's hogging the pizza or using cheap combat moves. By the time we call it quits, it's past 9, and William's parents have poked their heads in twice to check on us. Mark and I gather our things, thanking William for hosting and making vague plans to meet up again over the weekend. Remember, dinner on Sunday, Mark reminds me as we walk back to his house in the cool evening air. Mom said to be there by 5. I'll remember, I assure him, adjusting my backpack on my shoulder. Dash 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 dash. Mark's home is in a nicer neighborhood than William's, larger houses, more manicured lawns. The kind of suburban prosperity that comes with having a successful science novelist for a mother and a superhero for a father, though of course, the neighbors don't know about that last part. The Grayson house is a 2-story colonial with a well-kept garden and a basketball hoop over the garage. As we approach, I can see lights on in the kitchen, and through the window, the silhouette of Debbie Grayson moving about, likely preparing a late snack for her son and his friend. Mom's still up, Mark notes unnecessarily. She always waits for me to get home, even when I tell her not to. There's a fondness in his voice that makes my chest tighten unexpectedly. Mark loves his mother deeply, and that relationship will be tested to its limits when the truth about Nolan emerges. In the comics, Debbie Grayson's world was shattered by her husband's betrayal. Will the same happen here? And if so, is there anything I can do to mitigate that pain? No, stop thinking about these things. These thoughts are a luxury. What's important now is to survive, to prosper, to set things up to eventually enjoy life, experience all its pleasures. These thoughts occupy me as we enter the house, greeted by the warm smell of baking and Debbie's cheerful welcome. There you are. I was beginning to think you'd decided sleep at Williams after all. She comes forward to give Mark a quick hug, then turns to me with a warm smile. Megumi, it's good to see you. Are you hungry? I just took some cookies out of the oven. Always room for cookies, Mom, Mark answers for both of us, already moving toward the kitchen. I follow, offering a polite, "Thank you, Mrs. Grayson," as she ushers us to the kitchen table and sets out a plate of chocolate chip cookies still warm from the oven, along with 2 glasses of milk. Your father's still in his study, she tells Mark as we dig in. He's been working on that article for the Science Journal all evening. Mark nods, mouth full of cookie. We rearrange the whole room so he could have a better view while he writes. Well, he appreciates your help, even if he doesn't always say it. She turns to me. Mark says you'll be joining us for dinner on Sunday, Megumi. I'm making pot roast. Looking forward to it, I say, and am surprised to find that I mean it, at least partially. The prospect of sitting across from Nolan Grayson is both terrifying and fascinating. Debbie stays with us for a few minutes, asking about our evening and the video game tournament, before excusing herself to finish some work before bed. Once she's gone, Mark leads me upstairs to the guest room, a comfortable space with a twin bed, a desk, and a bookshelf filled with an eclectic mix of titles. Bathrooms down the hall, he reminds me, though according to my memories, I've stayed over enough times to know the layout of the house well. Mom usually makes breakfast around 8 on Saturdays, but we can grab something earlier if you need to get to the community center. 8 works, I tell him. The cleanup doesn't start until 8:30. Cool. He hovers in the doorway for a moment, as if wanting to say something else, then simply nods. Night, Megumi. Good night, Mark. After he leaves, I sit on the edge of the bed, taking in the quiet normalcy of the Grayson household. Somewhere in this house, Omni-Man, Nolan Grayson, is working on a scientific article, playing the role of accomplished author and devoted family man. The perfect cover for a Viltrumite agent sent to weaken Earth for conquest. And here I am, playing my own role as reformed delinquent Megumi Fushiguro, while harboring the memories of a cursed spirit king and knowledge of a future apocalypse. What a pair we make. Dash 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 dash. The weekend passes in a blur of activity. Saturday morning is consumed by the community cleanup, where I work alongside Amber and other volunteers to remove trash from a local park, all under the watchful eye of Officer Rodriguez and Mr. Washington. The purple dragons make no appearance, much to my relief. I'm not ready to deal with gang complications on top of everything else. Saturday afternoon and evening are spent with Mark and William, playing more video games and watching a sci-fi movie that feels, now after everything, laughably inaccurate given what I know about actual alien civilizations like the Viltrumites. I return to my uncle's apartment that night, checking in as promised and finding him asleep after another long hospital shift. Sunday morning is quiet. I use the time to practice my cursed energy techniques in the privacy of my room, making incremental progress in controlling the flow of power. By mid-afternoon, I'm preparing for dinner at the Graysons, showering and changing into what Megumi's memories suggest is appropriate attire for a family dinner. Since I've never been to one since I was a kid in my original life, dark jeans and a button-up shirt, casual but neat. I arrive at the Grayson house at 4:55 p.m., precisely 5 minutes before the invited time. Mark answers the door, looking unusually well-groomed in a collared shirt and khakis. Mom's gone full formal dinner mode, he explains in a low voice as he lets me in. Dad's actually wearing a tie. The significance isn't lost on me. This isn't just a casual meal. It's something of an occasion. I follow Mark to the living room, where Nolan Grayson stands by the fireplace, drink in hand, engaged in conversation with Debbie. He turns as we enter, and I get my first close look, my own, not Megumi's memories, at Omni-Man in his civilian guise. He's tall and powerfully built, with the perfect physique of a Viltrumite warrior barely concealed by his business casual attire. His mustache is immaculately groomed, his smile practiced and charming. Only his eyes betray a hint of something else, a coldness, an alienness that I doubt most humans would notice. One that I do simply from having seen it so much in my own, Sukuna's water reflection. Megumi, Nolan says, rising from his seat with a practiced smile. Good to see you again. It's been some time. I take his extended hand, acutely aware that I'm touching someone who could crush my bones to dust without effort. Thank you for having me over, Mr. Grayson. His handshake is perfectly calibrated, firm but not overpowering, the grip of someone who has spent centuries learning to mimic human social cues. Please, call me Nolan. I understand you've been quite the positive influence on Mark lately. There's something in his tone, a subtle assessment, that makes me wonder if he's genuinely pleased or merely evaluating potential threats in his son's life. Dad barely remembers Megumi, Mark says with a hint of exasperation. He's met you twice in 3 years? 3 times, actually, Nolan corrects smoothly. Though our interactions have been regrettably brief. My work schedule has been particularly demanding these past few years. Science waits for no man, I say, echoing a phrase I've apparently heard him use before, according to Megumi's memories. Nolan's eyebrow raises slightly, seemingly pleased by the recognition. Precisely. You have a good memory. Dinner's almost ready, Debbie announces from the doorway. Megumi, would you mind helping Mark set the table? I follow Mark to the dining room, where he begins laying out plates and silverware with the practiced efficiency of someone who's performed this task countless times. Sorry about my dad, he says quietly as we work. He's always like this, acts like he barely knows my friends even when he's met them before. It's fine, I assure him, placing napkins beside each plate. He seems preoccupied. I don't know if Mark's told his dad that I know about him being Omni-Man, better not test it. Mark snorts softly. That's one way to put it. Usually, he doesn't even make this much effort. We finish setting the table just as Debbie brings in the pot roast, a magnificent centerpiece surrounded by roasted vegetables. Nolan follows with a bottle of wine for the adults and a pitcher of water for Mark and me. As we take our seats, Nolan at the head of the table, Debbie to his right, Mark to his left, and me beside Mark, I can't help but marvel at the surreal normalcy of it all. Here I am, having Sunday dinner with the family of Earth's greatest hero, who is secretly its greatest threat. So, Megumi, Nolan says as Debbie serves the food, Mark tells me you're quite the scholar these days. Interested in medicine, I understand. I nod, accepting a plate loaded with pot roast and vegetables. I'm considering it. My uncle's a nurse, so I've grown up around the medical field. A noble profession, Nolan comments. The human body is a fascinating machine, though remarkably fragile. There's something in his tone, a clinical detachment, that sends a chill down my spine. To him, humans are indeed just fragile machines, inferior specimens to be studied and ultimately subjugated. Megumi's at the top of our biology class, Mark adds proudly. Mr. Donovan says he's got the best grasp of anatomy he's seen in years. Is that so? Nolan's gaze sharpens slightly, his interest seemingly piqued. A natural aptitude, or the result of dedicated study? Both, I guess, I reply, careful to maintain the persona of a bright but troubled student. I find it interesting how systems work together, how everything connects. Indeed. Nolan takes a sip of his wine. The interconnectedness of biological systems is a principle that extends far beyond Earth. In my research, I've found similar patterns across various species. Nolan, Debbie interjects with a gentle smile, let's not turn dinner into a science lecture. I'm sure the boys would rather discuss something else. Of course, dear. Nolan shifts gears smoothly. I believe the last time we spoke at any length, Megumi, you were having some difficulties at school. Mark mentioned you're involved in some sort of community service program now. The question is innocuous enough, but I sense a subtle probing. Is he genuinely curious, or is he truly, as I suspected earlier, assessing potential threats to his plans for Mark, cataloging the humans in his son's life? It's part of my probation requirements, I answer honestly, seeing no reason to hide what he could easily discover. I help with neighborhood cleanups, community center events, that sort of thing. Probation. Nolan's eyebrow rises slightly. I wasn't aware it had gone that far. Dad, Mark says, a warning note in his voice. It's okay, I tell Mark before addressing Nolan directly. I made some bad choices a while back. Got involved with the wrong crowd. I'm working to move past it. Nolan studies me for a moment, his expression unreadable. Then he nods. Rehabilitation rather than punishment. A sensible approach for young offenders. On Viltrum. He catches himself, clearing his throat. In some of the Scandinavian countries I've studied, they've found similar approaches to be quite effective. The slip catches me completely off guard. Did Nolan Grayson, the most calculating being on the planet, just make a careless error? Or was it deliberate, a test to gauge my reaction? I keep my expression neutral, taking a bite of pot roast to cover any momentary surprise. No, this simply confirms it. Mark must have already told him about me knowing. No way he, a man of his experience, would make such a blunder. Scandinavian countries are ahead of us in many ways, I say smoothly, maintaining the flow of conversation. Their rehabilitation rates are impressive. Nolan's eyes linger on me for a fraction too long before he nods. Indeed. Their social systems are built on different foundations than ours. More cohesive. The way he says, cohesive, carries an undertone I can't quite place, admiration, perhaps, or a hint of the Viltrumite ideology that values unity through strength and obedience. Speaking of different systems, Debbie interjects, clearly sensing the strange tension. Mark tells me you've been helping him with biology. His grades have improved significantly this quarter. Mom, Mark groans, embarrassed. I'm not failing anymore. That's hardly significant improvement. Not failing is better than the alternative, Nolan comments dryly, his attention shifting to his son. Though I'd prefer to see you excelling, not merely scraping by. I watch the family dynamic unfold, fascinated by the layers of meaning. To an outside observer, this is just a father pushing his son to achieve more. But knowing what I do about Nolan's true nature, every expectation he places on Mark carries the weight of a 1,000-year-old eugenic program designed to produce the perfect Viltrumite warriors. Or, the theories from my previous life are true, that Nolan didn't wish for Mark to develop his abilities, wanting to wait for them to die of old age before he committed his conquest. I should keep both in my mind, and prepare for both cases. Mark's doing fine, I say, feeling a strange protectiveness toward my friend. The material gets more complex this semester. Everyone's struggling a bit. Nolan turns his gaze back to me, and for a moment, I feel like I'm being assessed on a molecular level. You seem to manage well enough. Different strengths, I reply with a shrug. Mark helps me with English Lit. I can analyze biological systems, but ask me to interpret Steinbeck, and I'm lost. This earns a genuine laugh from Debbie. That's what friendship should be, complementary skills. When Nolan and I first met, he couldn't cook to save his life. I was hopeless with technology. Still are, dear, Nolan says with surprising warmth, reaching over to squeeze her hand. The gesture is so natural, so human, that it momentarily throws me. Despite wishing to take option 2 into consideration, everything I know about what's coming, everything I know he will do, seeing him like this, that there's genuine affection there. It makes the inevitable betrayal all the more tragic. The conversation shifts to safer topics after that: school events, local news, a charity fundraiser Debbie is helping organize. Throughout it all, I remain hyper-aware of Nolan's presence, cataloging every gesture, every inflection, searching for clues about his timeline, all while not making it obvious. Despite my desire for separation of it, in some ways I am still Sukuna. I know when to hide my observation. It is after all how I learned jujutsu so well. Since I never had a teacher, I had to observe sorcerers I killed at a young age. After the main course, Debbie brings out an apple pie for dessert, served with vanilla ice cream. As we eat, Mark regales his parents with stories from our video game tournament at Williams, complete with dramatic reenactments of particularly impressive victories. "You should have seen Megumi," he says enthusiastically. He figured out this combo move with Darkwing that nobody could counter. Even William was impressed, and he's been playing that game since the beta. Strategy and timing, I say modestly. It's just pattern recognition. Pattern recognition is a valuable skill, Nolan comments. In combat especially, the ability to anticipate an opponent's next move can mean the difference between victory and defeat. There it is again, that subtle shift from civilian conversation to warrior perspective. I wonder if Mark notices these slips, these glimpses of his father's true nature, or if they're so woven into the fabric of their relationship that they seem normal to him. "Is that how you approach your science writing, Mr. Grayson?" I ask, deliberately steering the conversation back to his cover identity. "Looking for patterns across different fields?" He seems pleased by the question. "Precisely. The universe operates on fundamental principles that repeat at various scales. My current article examines how certain biological adaptations mirror astronomical phenomena, a kind of cosmic symmetry." Sounds fascinating, I say, and mean it. Despite everything, Nolan Grayson is genuinely brilliant. His scientific insights, even those filtered through the lens of human understanding, represent knowledge accumulated across centuries of interstellar experience. "Perhaps you'd like to read it when it's published," he offers. "I could have Mark bring you a copy." "I'd like that," I reply, surprised by the offer. The meal concludes with coffee for the adults and more casual conversation. Throughout it all, I maintain the persona of Megumi. Respectful, intelligent, with occasional flashes of the street-smart edge that would be expected from someone with my background. But beneath that facade, my mind is still racing, analyzing every interaction, every nuance of Nolan's behavior. When it's time for me to leave, Debbie insists on packing leftovers for my uncle, and Nolan surprises me by walking me to the door alongside Mark. "It was good to have a proper conversation with you, Megumi," he says as we reach the entryway. "I'm pleased to see the positive direction you've taken." Mark benefits from having focused friends. There's a weight to his words that goes beyond simple approval. Is he genuinely impressed by my rehabilitation, or is he merely categorizing me as a non-threat to whatever plans he has for Mark? "Thank you for having me, sir," I reply, defaulting to formality. "Dinner was excellent." "You're welcome here anytime," he says, and though the invitation is standard politeness. There's something assessing in his gaze that makes me wonder if he's detected something unusual about me, some hint that I'm not quite what I appear to be. Mark walks me the rest of the way to the door, both of us carrying containers of leftovers that Debbie has packed. "So," he says as we step onto the porch, "that wasn't too painful, right?" Dad was actually being social for once. It was nice, I assure him. Your parents are great. Mark smiles, though there's a hint of something wistful in his expression. Yeah, they are. Even if Dad can be intense sometimes. If only he knew just how intense his father truly is. See you at school tomorrow? He asks. I nod. Bright and early. As I walk home through the quiet suburban streets, container of leftover pot roast in hand, I replay the dinner conversation in my mind. Nolan's slip about Viltrum was concerning, if indeed he does not know I know. I at first categorized it as him knowing because of his experience making such a blunder unsuitable for him, but what if there was more to it? What if he's becoming less careful about maintaining his cover? It might indicate that he's preparing to move forward with whatever timeline the Viltrumites have established for Earth. Or perhaps I'm looking too much into it and it was simply a momentary lapse. I have to acknowledge that he isn't perfect. Even a being as disciplined as Nolan Grayson might occasionally let his guard down in the comfort of his home, among family and a guest he's met several times before. Either way, I need to accelerate my own preparations. The cursed energy techniques I've been practicing are coming more easily now, but they're still far from what I'd need to face a Viltrumite. Not that I plan to confront Nolan directly, that would be suicide at my current expected level. But when the chaos begins, I'll need every advantage I can muster just to survive. I reach my uncle's apartment building and make my way up to our unit. The lights are off, he's working another night shift, but there's a note on the kitchen counter. Hope dinner went well. Leftovers in the fridge if you're still hungry. Don't forget your therapy appointment Tuesday. Uncle K. I add Debbie's containers to the refrigerator and settle at the kitchen table, suddenly feeling the weight of the day. Playing my role as Megumi, navigating the complexities of his life while carrying the knowledge of what's to come, it's exhausting in ways I hadn't anticipated. And now there's this new complication. I genuinely like the Graysons. Debbie's warmth, Mark's friendship, even Nolan's brilliant mind, all of it makes what's coming feel more personal, more tragic. I rest my head in my hands, allowing myself a moment of vulnerability in the empty apartment. The memories are exhausting. Sukuna's memories remain vivid but separate, a dark archive I can access without being consumed by it. The ones from my own original life before this bizarre transmigration feel still personal, but Megumi's memories, his experiences, his relationships, his daily life, those are becoming more integrated with my own consciousness. I'm not becoming him, exactly, but the boundaries are blurring. His memories with Mark and the others are influencing my own perceptions, rising my empathy, complicating what should be simple strategic calculations. I push away from the table and head to my room, determined to regain my focus. Tomorrow is Monday, another day of school, of maintaining my cover, of gathering information and building my strength. I can't afford to be distracted by emotional entanglements, no matter how genuine they might feel. As I prepare for bed, I catch sight of myself in the mirror, Megumi's face, with its sharp features and serious expression, looking back at me. For a moment, I wonder what the real Megumi Fushiguro would make of all this, his body inhabited by a stranger, his life repurposed for survival in a coming apocalypse. Would he understand? Would he approve of how I'm using his connections, his reputation, his second chance at a decent life? It doesn't matter, I tell myself firmly. He's gone, and I'm here, and all that matters now is surviving what's coming. But as I drift off to sleep, I can't quite shake the feeling that I'm becoming invested in this borrowed life in ways I never intended, and that those attachments might ultimately prove either my salvation or my downfall. Dash 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 dash. Author note: Hello everyone. I hope you all like the chapter. See, it's like this. We humans, most of us, are empathetic beings. I personally am, so I take it into consideration when writing my MC. We put ourselves in people's shoes and feel empathy towards them. The memories of Megumi aren't making him have Megumi's emotions, but more context that makes him more empathetic towards Mark, who's just a genuinely great guy. So yeah, I hope you all enjoyed the chapter. See you all later. Bye. 18 comments 0 vote. Situation. The field trip to Upstate Science Museum wasn't my idea. In fact, when Mr. Donovan announced it in biology class on Wednesday, I initially considered skipping it altogether. A day spent shepherding teenagers through exhibits on space exploration and natural history seemed like a waste of valuable preparation time. But Mark and William were excited, especially William, who wouldn't stop talking about the new quantum physics exhibit, and Ms. Chen had made it clear that school attendance was non-negotiable under my probation terms. So here I am, Friday morning, standing in the museum's cavernous main hall with 30 other students from Reginald Vell Johnson High. This is gonna be awesome, William says, practically vibrating with enthusiasm as he adjusts his glasses. They've got a working model of the Large Hadron Collider that actually visualizes particle collisions. Fascinating, I mutter, scanning the room out of habit. 2 exits visible from our position, security guards stationed near the entrance, cameras in the corners. Old instincts die hard. Mark nudges me. Try to contain your excitement, Megumi. You might pull a muscle. I roll my eyes but can't help a small smile. Sorry. Museums aren't really my thing. That's because you haven't seen the medical history exhibit, Mark says. They've got this whole section on ancient surgical tools that looks like a medieval torture chamber. Right up your alley. Before I can respond, Mr. Donovan claps his hands for attention. All right, people, listen up. You have your assignment sheets. Groups of 3 or 4, stay together, and meet back here at 1 o'clock for lunch. Remember, this isn't just a day off, I expect detailed observations for Monday's discussion. The students break into pre-arranged groups, and I find myself with Mark, William, and Samantha Eve Wilkins, known to everyone as Eve. She's one of the top students in our grade, with a focused intensity that rivals my own. According to Megumi's memories, she's been Mark's lab partner in chemistry since sophomore year. But I know as well from my previous life memories that she is Adam Eve, the girl who I believe is supposed to end up with Mark. The latter parts of the series were sadly, extremely so given my situation, parts one don't have quite the many details of. Where should we start? Eve asks, consulting the museum map with methodical precision. Quantum physics, William says immediately. Medical history, Mark counters, glancing at me. I shrug. Let's just work our way through systematically. Start on the ground floor and move up. We begin with the Earth Sciences exhibit, making our way through displays on geology, meteorology, and oceanography. William dutifully takes notes for our assignment, while Mark and Eve discuss the interactive volcano simulation. I follow along, contributing occasionally but mostly observing, both the exhibits and my companions. It's strange how comfortable this feels, just being a normal teenager on a school trip. For brief moments, I almost forget about Viltrumites and apocalypses, about cursed energy and probation officers. Almost. I can't let myself get too comfortable as my inclinations want me to. It would be foolish. By mid-morning, we've made our way to the second floor in the medical history exhibit. As Mark predicted, I find myself genuinely interested in the evolution of surgical techniques and anatomical understanding. There's something fascinating about how humans have gradually unlocked the secrets of their own bodies, despite their inherent fragility. Check this out, Mark calls, pointing to a display of early surgical instruments. They used to perform amputations with basically a handsaw and no anesthesia. Brutal but efficient, I comment, studying the implements. Though the survival rate must have been abysmal. That's your takeaway? Eve asks, raising an eyebrow. Not, thank goodness for modern medicine. I catch myself, remembering to respond as Megumi would. Well, that too, obviously. The medical exhibit transitions into the biology section, with its impressive collection of preserved specimens and anatomical models. As we examine a detailed cross-section of the human brain, I notice William has wandered ahead to the adjacent physics hall, drawn inexorably to his beloved quantum mechanics. We should probably follow him before he gets lost in theoretical dimensions, Mark jokes. We find William already deep in conversation with a museum docent, a middle-aged man with a neat beard and an enthusiastic manner, about the particle acceleration display. And that's why the visualization uses color to represent different energy states, the docent is explaining as we approach. It's a simplification, of course, but it helps convey the basic principles. William nods eagerly. What about quantum entanglement? Does the exhibit address that? The docent smiles. It does, actually. Follow me, it's just around the corner. We trail after them into a room dominated by a large, complex apparatus at its center, presumably the model of the Large Hadron Collider that William had mentioned. Around the perimeter are various interactive displays, currently being operated by students from another school group. As the docent leads William to the quantum entanglement exhibit, Mark, Eve, and I spread out to explore the room. I find myself drawn to a display on cosmic radiation, reading about the particles that constantly bombard Earth from space. According to the information panel, most are deflected by our magnetic field, while others pass harmlessly through our bodies every second. Except they wouldn't pass harmlessly through a Viltrumite, I think. They'd be vulnerable to certain types of radiation, if I remember the comics correctly. Or was it a specific type of radiation? Either way, useful information to file away. I'm so absorbed in my thoughts that I almost miss the subtle change in the atmosphere, a shift in the ambient noise, a tension in the air. My instincts, honed by Sukuna's decades of battle awareness, snap to attention before my conscious mind even registers why. Looking up, I scan the room and immediately spot the source of my unease. 3 men have entered from a side door, maintenance access, based on the signage. They're dressed in what appear to be museum staff uniforms, but their body language is all wrong, too tense, too deliberate. One remains by the door, while the other 2 move deeper into the exhibit area. My eyes narrow as I take in additional details. Slight bulges under their jackets. The careful way they're surveying the room. The communication devices in their ears. These aren't museum staff. I catch Mark's eye across the room and make a subtle gesture, a warning signal we've developed during our years at school together, according to Megumi's memories. Something's wrong. He frowns, not immediately understanding, but his posture straightens as he picks up on my tension. Before I can move toward him, one of the men reaches into his jacket and pulls out a gun, pointing it at the ceiling. Everyone stay calm and nobody gets hurt. He shouts, firing a single shot into the air. The sound echoes through the exhibit hall, followed immediately by screams and cries of alarm. Students drop to the floor or freeze in place, while the docent moves protectively in front of William. This is a robbery, the man continues, his voice steady and controlled. We're only interested in one thing, and it's not in this room. Stay down, stay quiet, and you'll all be going home today. The second armed man begins herding students and staff toward one corner of the room, while the third remains at the door, gun now visible in his hand as well. I assess the situation rapidly. 3 armed men, at least a dozen students plus staff in the room. More students in adjacent exhibit areas who might wander in unknowingly. Security will respond to the gunshot, but how quickly? Mark has dropped to the floor near a display case, pulling a younger student down with him protectively. William and the docent are against the far wall, partially obscured by the collider model. Eve is across the room, her posture tense but controlled. I need to make a decision quickly. These men are too well organized for this to be an ordinary robbery. Their positioning, the way they're controlling the room, they're professionals, possibly mercenaries. And whatever they're after in the museum, it can't be good. The leader gestures to the third man. Secure the hallway. We have 4 minutes until security override kicks in. As the third man moves to check the corridor, I catch a glimpse of something on his wrist, a tattoo peeking out from under his sleeve. Some kind of military or mercenary insignia, nothing I recognize. These indeed aren't random criminals, they're, as my suspicions already suggested, now confirmed, professionals, well-trained and well-equipped. I make eye contact with Mark across the room. He's tense, but unlike me, completely powerless in this situation. In the timeline I remember, his abilities wouldn't manifest for weeks. I shift my attention to Eve, who's positioned near the emergency exit. If anyone besides me has a chance of handling this, it's her with her molecular manipulation powers. I catch her eye briefly, giving her the slightest nod. Since she's Adam Eve, with me handling the how I know later, if she suspects that is, she'll understand what needs to be done. I'll create a distraction, she'll neutralize the threat. Simple, efficient, with minimal risk to the hostages. The leader moves toward the quantum entanglement display, where a small, cylindrical device sits on a pedestal. "This is it," he says to his partner. "Get it and let's go." The second man approaches the display, pulling out what looks like a specialized tool to bypass the security system. I need to give Eve an opening, but I need to be careful. Direct confrontation would endanger everyone in the room. I need a distraction that will create enough chaos for her to act without drawing attention to herself. Slowly, I start to edge along the wall, using the other students as cover. If I can trigger the fire alarm near the exit, it might provide enough confusion for Eve to use her powers discreetly. But before I can move much further, the situation escalates. William, ever the science enthusiast, speaks up from his position near the docent. "That's experimental quantum technology. You can't just take it, it's unstable." The leader turns sharply. "Shut up, kid. Nobody asked you." "But it's true," William persists, his voice tight with fear but determined. "That device contains experimental quantum particles. If it's removed from the containment field without proper protocols." I said shut up. The leader strides toward William, gun raised threateningly. I glance at Eve, expecting her to make her move now that attention is focused away from the device. But she remains frozen, her eyes wide with fear. This isn't the confident superhero I expected, she looks like any other terrified teenager. A cold realization washes over me. Her powers may or may not have manifested yet either. The timeline may be too different here. I'm on my own. In that split second, I make my decision. I grab a heavy fire extinguisher from a nearby wall mount and hurl it with precise force at the overhead sprinkler system. The impact triggers the sprinklers, sending water cascading down throughout the exhibit hall. Screams erupt as cold water drenches everyone. In the confusion, I move quickly toward William and the leader, who's momentarily distracted by the sudden downpour. The second gunman has already removed the quantum device from its housing, triggering alarms that add to the chaos. The third man rushes back in from the hallway. "Security's coming. We need to move now." The leader grabs William by the collar. "This one comes with us. Insurance." That's when something shifts inside me. The careful calculation of Megumi Fushiguro falls away, replaced by something older, colder, and infinitely more arrogant. A presence that views these armed men not as threats, but as insects who've wandered into the wrong garden. "Let him go." My voice cuts through the chaos with unnatural clarity, carrying a weight that doesn't belong to a high school student. The leader turns, gun swinging toward me. "Stay back." I don't stay back. I advance with deliberate steps, water streaming down my face, my eyes locked on his. There's no fear in my movement, only the inexorable confidence of a predator approaching cornered prey. "You dare point a weapon at me?" The words emerge in a tone I barely recognize as my own, imperious, dismissive, amused. "Know your place." There's something in my voice, in my posture, that makes the man hesitate. Even through the water and chaos, he senses something wrong, something dangerous radiating from the teenager before him. Shoot him! Yells the man with the device. The leader fires, but I'm already moving. With inhuman speed, I sidestep the bullet's path and close the distance between us. My hand strikes out, fingers curled in a precise formation that channels cursed energy in a way that feels both foreign and intimately familiar. Dismantle, I whisper, the word coming unbidden to my lips. A thin, invisible line of cursed energy extends from my fingertips, slicing through the gun with surgical precision. The weapon falls apart in the man's hands, cut so cleanly it seems to disintegrate. The leader stares in shock at his ruined weapon, then at me. I grab William and shove him toward the docent, never taking my eyes off the armed men. You stand before a king, I say, my voice resonating with a power and authority that isn't mine, or rather, isn't entirely Megumi's. It's Sukuna's essence, his absolute conviction in his own superiority. And yet you fail to kneel. The three men exchange glances, clearly reassessing the situation. They hadn't counted on encountering something beyond their understanding. This isn't worth it, the third man says, backing toward the door. We need to go. Now. The leader hesitates, looking between me and the exit, calculating his options. I can see the moment he decides to cut his losses. Fall back, he orders. Plan B. As they retreat toward the maintenance door, the man carrying the quantum device suddenly hurls it toward the center of the room, directly at a group of huddled students. Without thinking, I extend my hand again. Dismantle. The device splits in half midair, its internal components separating harmlessly before clattering to the floor in pieces. No explosion, no quantum catastrophe, just broken technology. The gunmen use the distraction to escape through the maintenance door. I could pursue them, but my priority is ensuring everyone in the room is safe. The sprinklers shut off as suddenly as they started, leaving everyone soaked and confused. Security guards burst into the room moments later, followed by museum staff. Mark is at my side instantly. What did you do? He whispers, eyes wide. I blink, the cold, regal presence receding as quickly as it had come. I don't know. Instinct, I guess. That wasn't instinct, Megumi. That was. He trails off, unable to find the words. I shake my head slightly. Not now. Later. The next hour is a blur of police statements, paramedic checks, and concerned teachers counting heads. I stick to a simple story. I threw the fire extinguisher to trigger the sprinklers, creating confusion that allowed William to escape. The gun must have malfunctioned when the water hit it. The police seem skeptical but have no reason to doubt me, especially when the museum security footage from that room turns out to be corrupted by what they assume was an electrical surge from the sprinkler system. In reality, a subtle application of cursed energy had ensured those particular cameras would capture nothing useful. By the time we're cleared to leave, the field trip is officially cancelled, and students are being sent home early. Mr. Donovan looks exhausted as he arranges transportation. Mark, William, Eve, and I end up in the same group heading back to school. William hasn't stopped thanking me since we left the exhibit hall. I still don't understand what happened to his gun, he says for the third time. It just fell apart. Water damage, probably, I say dismissively. Cheap hardware. Mark gives me a look that says we'll be discussing this later, but says nothing. Eve, however, has been watching me with a calculating expression that makes me uneasy. She's too perceptive, too analytical. If anyone in our group might piece together what really happened, it's her. Quick thinking with the sprinklers, she says finally. Not many people would stay that calm with guns pointed at them. I shrug. Not my first rodeo. Right. Your troubled past. There's no judgment in her tone, just careful assessment. Still, it was impressive. As we arrive back at school, students are already being picked up by worried parents who've heard about the incident on the news. Mark's mother is waiting, her face tight with concern. I should go, Mark says. My mom's freaking out. But we need to talk. Tonight. I nod. Your place. After dinner. As he walks away, William gives me one more grateful look before heading to his own mother's car. Eve lingers for a moment. Whatever you did in there, she says quietly, thank you. Before I can respond, she's walking away, leaving me to wonder just how much she noticed. I check my phone to find several missed calls from Uncle Kenji and a text from Ms. Chen asking if I'm alright. The news travels fast. As I wait for my uncle to arrive, I reflect on what happened in the museum. For a moment, I had let slip back into what it is like to be Sukuna, allowed the rise of his arrogance, his casual disregard for human threats, his absolute certainty that he stands above all others. It had felt natural, empowering. And that's what worries me. The line between who I am and who Sukuna was is blurring in ways I hadn't anticipated. I had used his technique, dismantle, with an ease that suggests it's becoming more integrated with my abilities. But I hadn't lost control. I had protected William, neutralized the threat without killing anyone, and maintained my cover. No one except possibly Mark suspects anything beyond quick thinking and good luck. No police involvement beyond routine statements, no reason for Ms. Chen to revoke my probation. I had walked the line perfectly. As Uncle Kenji's car pulls up, I take a deep breath and prepare to play the role of the shaken but brave teenager who helped save his classmates. Another performance in this increasingly complex life I've found myself living. But beneath the performance, a question lingers: how much of Sukuna am I willing to let surface when necessary? And will I always be able to push those impulses back down when the moment passes? Only time will tell, I suppose. Dash 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 dash. Author note: hello everyone. I hope you all like the chapter. Finally we see the Sukuna part of the MC resurface. So do tell me how you found it. I hope to see you all later. Bye. 23 comments 0 vote. Explanation. The Grayson household is quiet when I arrive at 8 o'clock. Debbie answers the door with a warm smile that doesn't quite reach her eyes, the residual worry of a mother whose son was in danger earlier that day. Megumi, come in. Mark's upstairs. He said you two have a project to work on. I nod, accepting the convenient excuse Mark must have provided. Biology assignment. Thanks for having me over, Mrs. Grayson. You're always welcome here, she says, ushering me inside. Especially after what happened today. Mark told us you helped keep everyone safe. I shift uncomfortably under her grateful gaze. I just reacted. Anyone would have done the same. Not everyone would have thought to trigger the sprinklers, she counters. You have good instincts, Megumi. If only she knew what kind of instincts had actually surfaced in that moment. Is Mr. Grayson home? I ask, glancing around the living room. No, he's in Malaysia again. Some kind of follow-up to that incident last week. Her expression clouds briefly. He should be back tomorrow. I nod, relieved. Facing Mark's questions will be challenging enough without Omni-Man's perceptive gaze to contend with as well. Mark's in his room, Debbie continues. I've made some snacks if you boys get hungry. Just help yourselves. I thank her and head upstairs, each step feeling heavier than the last. I've spent the afternoon rehearsing explanations, crafting a narrative that will satisfy Mark's curiosity without revealing too much of the truth. I knock on Mark's door, hearing a muffled, "Come in," from the other side. Mark is sitting at his desk, a textbook open in front of him, though I doubt he's been reading it. He looks up as I enter, his expression a mixture of concern, curiosity, and something else, a wariness that wasn't there before. Hey, I say, closing the door behind me. Hey. He gestures to the chair by his bed. So. I sit down, maintaining a casual posture despite the tension in the room. So. You want to tell me what happened at the museum? He keeps his voice low, mindful of his mother downstairs. Because I know what I saw, Megumi, and it wasn't normal. I take a deep breath. This is it, the moment of truth, or at least, a carefully curated version of it. I have abilities, I begin, watching his reaction carefully. I haven't had them for a while. Like superpowers. He leans forward, his eyes widening. Not exactly like the heroes on TV, I say, choosing my words carefully. It's more like energy manipulation. I can focus my energy to affect things around me. Like cutting a gun in half. His tone is incredulous but not disbelieving. I nod. That was an extreme case. I don't usually have that kind of precision. And what was that thing you said? Dismantle. I tense slightly. He'd heard that. It's just a word I use to focus. Like a mental trigger. Where did these powers come from? How long have you had them? This is where I need to be careful. I discovered them very recently, I say, deciding on honesty rather than a fabricated timeline. It happened suddenly, almost like they were waiting to emerge. How recently are we talking? Just a few weeks ago, I admit. I was alone in my room when it first happened. I got frustrated with a homework problem and the textbook just split in two. Clean cut, like it had been sliced with a razor. This much aligns with what he knows about me, the occasional flashes of temper, the intensity I sometimes display. It's a plausible origin story while staying close to the truth. Is that why you've been acting different lately? More. I don't know, controlled. I nod, surprised by his perceptiveness. I've been trying to understand what's happening to me. Trying to keep it contained. And you never told anyone? Not even me. There's hurt in his voice, and I feel a genuine pang of regret. In the short time I've known him, truly known him, not just through Megumi's memories, I've come to value Mark's friendship. I couldn't risk it, Mark. My probation, my uncle's situation. If anyone found out I was different, who knows what would happen? I'd probably end up in some government lab. He winces, and I wonder if he's thinking about his own secret, the heritage he shares with his father, the powers that haven't yet manifested. I get keeping secrets, he says finally. But what you did today. You saved William. You could have been shot. I reacted on instinct, I say, which is at least partially true. When I saw him grab William, something just clicked. And that voice. Mark presses. The way you spoke to them. That wasn't you, Megumi. It was like someone else was talking. I tense. This is dangerous territory. What do you mean? You said something about them, standing before a king, and failing to kneel. It was intense. I force a self-deprecating smile. Did I? It's kind of a blur. Sometimes when I use a lot of energy at once, it affects my mind. Makes me say weird things. Mark studies me for a long moment, and I can see him weighing my explanation against what he witnessed. So these powers, he says finally. What exactly can you do? This is safer ground. I can give him a simplified version of my abilities without revealing their true nature. I can manipulate energy, focus it into different forms. What you saw today was the most precise I've ever managed. Usually it's just pushing things, breaking things. Like telekinesis. Not exactly. It's more direct. I have to be close to what I'm affecting. And it takes concentration. Can you show me? I hesitate. It's not a party trick, Mark. I know that, he says quickly. But I want to understand. You trusted me enough to tell me this much. After a moment's consideration, I nod. All right. But something small. I look around his room, spotting a pencil on his desk. I extend my hand toward it, channeling a minimal amount of cursed energy, just enough to be visible as a faint shimmer around my fingers. Dismantle, I whisper, focusing on precision. The pencil splits cleanly in half, both pieces rolling slightly on the desktop. Mark's eyes widen. Holy shit. Like I said, small scale. That's incredible, Megumi. He picks up the pencil halves, examining the perfectly smooth cut. And no one else knows about this? No one, I confirm. And it needs to stay that way. Of course, he agrees quickly. I wouldn't tell anyone. I believe him. Whatever else has changed in this world, Mark Grayson's loyalty to his friends seems constant. So what now? He asks. Are you going to use these powers to help people? Like, become a superhero or something? I shake my head firmly. Absolutely not. The last thing I need is attention. I'm on probation, remember? My goal is to keep my head down, finish school, and figure out what these abilities mean for my future. But you could do so much good. Mark, I cut him off gently. I'm not like the Guardians of the Globe. I don't have their super strength or invulnerability. If I get shot, I die. What happened today was a fluke, I acted without thinking. All true. I don't have their strength and invulnerability, I have potential for greater. I did act without truly thinking it all through. Currently if I do get shot in the right spot, I'd die. He looks disappointed but nods in understanding. I guess that makes sense. It's just. Not many people get the chance to make a difference like that. The irony of Mark Grayson, future Invincible, saying this to me isn't lost on me. Maybe someday, I concede. But right now, I need to focus on staying out of trouble. Ms. Chen would have a field day if she knew I was involved in anything unusual. Yeah, I get it. He sighs, then gives me a small smile. Thanks for trusting me with this. You're my friend, I say simply. And you saw what happened. I owed you an explanation. We sit in silence for a moment, the weight of shared secrets creating a new layer to our friendship. So, Mark says finally, you want to actually work on that biology assignment? We might as well make use of the excuse. I smile, relieved at the change of subject. Sure. As we spread our textbooks across his bed and begin discussing cell structures, I can't help but reflect on what just transpired. I've given Mark a heavily edited version of the truth, enough to satisfy his curiosity without revealing the full extent of my situation. He doesn't know about Sukuna's memories, or my knowledge of his father's true nature, or the coming catastrophe that will reshape both our lives. But he knows I have powers, and he's accepted that reality with remarkable ease. Perhaps it's because, deep down, he's always suspected he might be different too. I know he hopes for it. The son of Omni-Man, carrying Viltrumite DNA that will soon manifest in ways that will change him forever. For now, though, we're just two teenagers doing homework on a Friday night, pretending that the strangest thing in our lives is high school biology. And for a few hours at least, I can almost believe it. The weekend passes quietly. Saturday is once again consumed by the community cleanup, where I work alongside Amber and other volunteers, all while fielding concerned questions about the museum incident. Sunday brings a quiet day at home with Uncle Kenji, who's unusually attentive following the scare at the museum. By Monday morning, I've almost convinced myself that things might return to normal, at least, as normal as they can be given my circumstances. That illusion shatters the moment I step into the school hallway and spot Eve waiting by my locker. She straightens when she sees me, her expression unreadable. We need to talk. About. I keep my tone casual as I open my locker. Not here. She glances around at the crowded hallway. Lunch period. Meet me behind the gym. Before I can respond, she walks away, leaving me with a knot of apprehension in my stomach. Eve noticed something at the museum, something she's had the weekend to think about. The morning classes drag by, each minute bringing me closer to a confrontation I'm not sure how to handle. Mark catches my eye during history, raising an eyebrow in silent question. I give him a subtle nod, indicating everything's fine. When the lunch bell finally rings, I make my way to the designated meeting spot, finding Eve already waiting, arms crossed. "Thanks for coming," she says as I approach. "You didn't give me much choice," I reply. "What's this about?" She studies me for a moment, her analytical gaze uncomfortably perceptive. "What happened at the museum?" "What you did." I maintain a neutral expression. "I threw a fire extinguisher at the sprinklers. Created a distraction." "No," she says firmly. "What you really did. I saw you, Megumi. That gun didn't just fall apart, you did something to it." I consider my options. Denial seems pointless. Eve is too observant, too intelligent to be easily fooled. But I can't reveal everything either. "You're right," I admit finally. "I did something. But I'm not sure you'd believe me if I told you what." "Try me." Her posture relaxes slightly, encouraged by my honesty. "I've seen some pretty unbelievable things." "Have you?" I wonder. "You are already Adam Eve in this timeline. I looked that up, but you didn't react as I expected. What is there different about you compared to the original?" "I have certain abilities," I say, echoing the explanation I gave Mark. "Energy manipulation. I can focus it to affect objects around me. Like cutting a gun in half with invisible energy." I nod. "Among other things." "How long have you had these abilities?" "Very recently," I say, maintaining consistency with what I told Mark. "It's all still new to me." Eve uncrosses her arms, her expression softening slightly. "And what you did at the museum, that was control." I hesitate. "Not entirely. It was more instinct than precision. I saw William in danger and just reacted." "That's not what I meant," she says, her voice dropping lower. "I heard what you said to them. About being a king. About them kneeling." I tense. "I don't remember saying that." "You did. And it wasn't just what you said, it was how you said it. Like you were someone else entirely." "Damn it. Why did they both notice that? Did they have that good of a hearing?" "Sometimes when I use a lot of energy at once, it affects my mind," I repeat the explanation I gave Mark. "Makes me say things I don't remember later." She doesn't look convinced. "That's convenient." "It's the truth," I insist, then soften my tone. "Look, Eve, I don't fully understand these powers myself. All I know is that I used them to help our friends, and I'd prefer to keep them secret." "Why tell me, then? Why not just deny everything?" "Because you're too smart for that," I say honestly. "And because I respect you enough not to lie to your face." This seems to resonate with her. After a moment, she nods. "Fair enough. Does anyone else know?" "Mark. That's it." "And you want to keep it that way?" "I have to. I'm on probation, Eve. If word gets out that I'm different, who knows what happens next?" Best case scenario, I'm back in juvie for violating some obscure term of my release. Worst case, I disappear into some government facility. She winces slightly at this. Exactly what I want. This could be an opportunity. I know Eve has had her own fair share of problems after revealing her powers to her friends. Becoming close allies with her as well as Mark will be very useful in the future. Besides that, I have already taken precautions for such a situation, it is why I am so calm despite everything. I am not a fool, I already made contingencies in case a situation arises where I am forced to use my abilities and they become public. "I understand discretion," she says finally. "Your secret is safe with me." "Thank you." She studies me for another moment. "You know, there are others like you. People with abilities who use them to help others. I'm not looking to be a superhero, Eve," I say firmly. "I just want to graduate high school without any more complications." A small smile touches her lips. "Sometimes complications find us whether we want them or not. Don't I know it?" I think grimly. "If you ever need to talk about these abilities," she continues, "or if you ever find yourself in over your head, let me know." I might be able to help. The offer is intriguing. Is this Eve reaching out as a fellow powered individual? Or simply as a concerned classmate? I appreciate that, I say carefully. Same goes for you. If you ever need help with anything unusual. Something flickers in her eyes, recognition, perhaps, or confirmation of a suspicion. But she simply nods. We should get to the cafeteria before lunch ends, she says, glancing at her watch. People will wonder where we are. Dash 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 dash. Author note: Hello everyone. I hope you all like the chapter. Do tell me how you found it. So yeah, I hope to see you all later. Bye. 15 comments 0 vote. Who should be the female lead? Who do you guys suggest to be the love interest? I'm personally thinking Eve at the moment, but I'm open to suggestions since I don't really know much about the women in Invincible. Also, this isn't really necessary, it's more for my own ease. Could you if you possible also attach an image of the character so that I don't have to search them up? If not possible then the name is still good enough. So yeah, I'm interested in hearing from you guys. See ya. 84 comments 0 vote. Friends. The week following my conversations with Mark and Eve passes with a strange new normalcy. I maintain my routine, classes, check-ins with Mr. Washington, community service hours, but the dynamics have shifted subtly. Mark watches me with a mix of fascination and concern, while Eve's analytical gaze follows me in the hallways, calculating and curious. By Friday, I've almost convinced myself that things might settle down. That illusion shatters when Ms. Jacobs, our chemistry teacher, announces a special project. For the next 3 weeks, she says, tapping a stack of papers on her desk, you'll be working in pairs on an advanced chemical analysis project. This will count for 30% of your final grade, so I suggest you take it seriously. I glance around the room, mentally cataloging potential partners. Mark isn't in this class, and William's already making eye contact with his usual lab partner. To save time, Ms. Jacobs continues, I've already assigned the pairs based on your academic strengths and areas for improvement. A collective groan rises from the class. Oh, come on, she chides. A little diversity in working styles will be good for you all. She begins reading names from her list. I tune out, staring at the periodic table on the wall and contemplating the irony of studying chemical elements when Eve can manipulate them at will. Fushiguro and Wilkins, Ms. Jacobs announces, bringing my attention sharply back to the present. Eve turns in her seat to look at me, one eyebrow raised. I give her a slight nod, acknowledging our new partnership. After class, Eve approaches my desk as I'm gathering my books. So, partners, she says, her tone carefully neutral. We should probably set up a schedule. I've got community service tomorrow morning, I reply. But I'm free in the afternoon. She nods. My place at 3. I have access to some equipment that might be useful. I hesitate, weighing the implications. Spending time alone with Eve means more opportunities for her to observe me, to ask questions I might not want to answer. But refusing would seem suspicious. Works for me, I agree finally. Text me your address. Already have your number from the class directory, she says, pulling out her phone. A moment later, my phone buzzes with a text. See you tomorrow. As she walks away, I can't help but notice the subtle confidence in her movements, the precision of her steps. Eve carries herself like someone who knows exactly who she is and what she's capable of, a stark contrast to the uncertain teenagers around us. I check my phone, finding her address and a brief message, bring your notes on molecular binding. We'll need them for the first phase. Saturday arrives with clear skies and unseasonably warm weather. After completing my community service hours at the local park, picking up trash alongside other probationers under Mr. Washington's watchful eye, I head home to shower and change before meeting Eve. Uncle Kenji is working a day shift at the hospital, so the apartment is empty. I take the opportunity to practice my cursed energy techniques, focusing on precision and control rather than raw power. The dismantle technique comes more easily now, allowing me to slice through objects with increasing accuracy. By the time I leave for Eve's house, I feel more centered, more in control of both my abilities and my life. Eve's home is in a quiet neighborhood of well-maintained single-family houses, not quite as upscale as the Graysons' area, but comfortable and respectable. Her house is a two-story colonial with a neatly trimmed lawn and flower beds showing the first signs of spring growth. She answers the door before I can knock, as if she sensed my approach. "Right on time," she says, stepping aside to let me in. My parents are at a faculty retreat for the weekend. Dad's department at the university hosts it every year. The house is tastefully decorated in a style that speaks of academic sensibilities, bookshelves lined with scientific texts and literature classics, walls adorned with framed botanical prints and geological maps. It feels like a place where knowledge is valued above all else. "We can work in the basement," Eve says, leading me through the living room. I've converted part of it into a lab. I follow her down a carpeted staircase to a finished basement that's been divided into two sections. One half contains the standard fare, a couch, television, and game console. The other half, however, is anything but standard. A long workbench runs along one wall, equipped with what looks like professional-grade scientific equipment, microscopes, a small centrifuge, various testing apparatus, and a computer setup with dual monitors. Glass cabinets hold neatly labeled chemicals and supplies. Impressive, I say, genuinely surprised. School budget couldn't afford half of this. Eve shrugs, but I catch a hint of pride in her expression. Science scholarships have their perks. Plus, my parents believe in fostering educational interests. She gestures to a stool at the workbench. "Make yourself comfortable. I'll get us some drinks before we start." As she heads back upstairs, I take the opportunity to examine the lab more closely. Everything is meticulously organized, with labeled containers and color-coded notebooks. One shelf holds a collection of academic journals, many featuring articles on molecular biology and quantum physics, reading material far beyond high school level. A corkboard above the desk displays various notes and diagrams, including what appears to be a complex molecular structure drawn with precise attention to detail. Near it, partially hidden behind other papers, I glimpse what looks like a costume design sketch, pink and white with a distinctive atom symbol. I quickly look away, not wanting to be caught examining it too closely. Eve returns with 2 glasses of iced tea, setting one beside me. "Find anything interesting?" "Just admiring your setup," I say, turning away from the corkboard. "You're serious about science?" "It comes naturally to me," she replies with a small smile. "Now, about this project." She pulls out a folder containing the assignment details and spreads them on the workbench. For the next hour, we discuss approach and methodology, dividing tasks based on our strengths. The conversation flows easily, focused on the work at hand. As we begin setting up the initial experiments, Eve breaks the academic rhythm. "So," she says casually, measuring a chemical into a beaker, "your energy manipulation. Is it limited to cutting things, or can you do more?" I pause, considering my response. "I'm still exploring the limits." She adjusts the flame under the beaker with practiced precision. "And what have you discovered so far?" "That precision is harder than raw output," I admit, deciding that limited honesty is the best approach. "And that it's tied to my emotional state. Like when you went all, kneel before your king, at the museum." There's no judgment in her tone, just curiosity. I wince slightly. That was an anomaly. Was it? She looks up from her work, meeting my eyes directly. Or was it something else emerging? Something that's part of these new abilities. Her perception is uncomfortably accurate. I busy myself with adjusting the microscope to avoid her gaze. It's complicated. I understand complicated, she says softly. More than you might think. There's something in her voice, a vulnerability beneath the confident exterior, that makes me look up. Is she trying to slowly reveal her powers to me? If so, then this is going far faster and better than I expected. Without these barriers, she can become a formidable ally in the future. These powers, I say carefully, they make me feel different. When I use them, especially under pressure, it's like accessing a part of myself I didn't know existed. A more confident, more commanding part. Eve watches me with interest. And that part of you spoke at the museum? I nod, keeping my explanation vague but plausible. I think it has to do with control. Before my probation, I had a certain position in my old crew. People listened when I spoke. I was used to authority. This much is true from Megumi's memories. He had been a leader among his delinquent peers, respected and feared for his tactical mind and unflinching resolve. And when these powers emerged, that aspect of your personality came with them, Eve suggests, following my reasoning. Something like that, I agree, relieved she's accepting this explanation. The powers make me feel in control again. Maybe too much so. Eve considers this, absently twirling a pencil between her fingers. That makes sense. Power dynamics can be deeply ingrained in our psychological responses. But it could be dangerous if that part of you takes over in stressful situations. Hence the practice, I say, gesturing to the notebook where I've been recording my progress with cursed energy techniques. I need to understand what I can do and how to control it. Maybe I could help, she offers, setting down the pencil. With the scientific aspects, at least. Energy manipulation has to follow some kind of physical laws, even if they're not conventional ones. I raise an eyebrow. And why would you want to help me? Professional curiosity, she says with a slight smile. And maybe because I know what it's like to have questions about yourself that science might help answer. An interesting choice of words, vague enough to maintain her cover, but specific enough to suggest personal experience. I wonder how much she's willing to reveal about herself. I'd appreciate the perspective, I say. You clearly know your science. I do, she agrees without false modesty. And unusual phenomena are particularly interesting to me. For a moment, I'm tempted to let her know that I'm aware of her secret identity, to create a foundation of mutual understanding. But revealing that knowledge would raise too many questions about how I obtained it. Saying she looks the same isn't sufficient, after all many others haven't connected the dots. She's smart enough to know there would be a different cause. Better to let her maintain her privacy while we build trust naturally. So what kind of experiments did you have in mind? I ask instead. Controlled conditions, she says, her eyes lighting up with scientific enthusiasm. Documenting your abilities under different parameters, analyzing energy patterns, testing limits and applications. That sounds remarkably thorough. Science usually is, she replies with a smile. But we can start simple. Show me something basic, something you have good control over. I hesitate, then extend my hand toward a pencil on the desk. Focusing my cursed energy, I whisper, dismantle. The pencil splits cleanly in half, both pieces rolling slightly on the desktop. Eve leans forward, fascinated. No visible energy discharge, but definite molecular separation along a precise plane. She picks up the pencil halves, examining the perfectly smooth cut. Did you feel resistance? Energy expenditure? Minimal, I admit. A pencil is easy. Denser materials require more focus, more energy. And living tissue? I tense at the question. I haven't tried. And don't plan to. Not yet. She nods, seemingly relieved. Good. That's a boundary worth maintaining. She sets down the pencil halves and retrieves a notebook from a drawer. Let's document what we know so far, then design some basic tests. For the next 2 hours, we alternate between working on our chemistry project and exploring my abilities. Eve approaches both with the same methodical precision, taking notes, asking insightful questions, suggesting refinements to my techniques. Her scientific perspective is illuminating. She helps me understand the relationship between visualization and energy flow, suggesting that my mental focus acts as a channel for the cursed energy. It's like word, dismantle, creates a conceptual framework, she theorizes, sketching a diagram in her notebook. Your mind defines the outcome, and the energy conforms to that definition. That actually makes sense, I state, acting surprised. Well, I am indeed surprised by her insight. For it is something I of course already knew, but that she realized it from so little information is remarkable. I've been thinking of it as a technique to be mastered, but it's more about intent and visualization. I continue. Exactly. The technique is just the vehicle for your intent. Her eyes are bright with intellectual excitement. Try this, instead of focusing on cutting, visualize separating the molecular bonds. I pick up a small glass beaker, concentrating on the molecular structure as Eve described. Dismantle, I whisper. The beaker separates along a perfect horizontal line, the two halves settling gently onto the table without a single jagged edge. That was cleaner than before, I observe, intentional. It would help to show some improvement. I at first wished not to show her the extent of the cutting ability since she should be able to sense how it cleaves through the bonds, but this much should be all right. It is not the full capacity of what I have mastered. Because you were working with the material's structure rather than against it, Eve explains. Energy follows the path of least resistance when properly directed. As the afternoon progresses, our conversation drifts from abilities to more personal topics. Eve tells me about her childhood as a science prodigy, carefully avoiding any mention of her superhero activities but sharing her struggle to fit in with peers who couldn't understand her interests. In return, I share modified versions of Megumi's memories, the loss of his parents, the spiral into delinquency, the intervention that set him on a better path. It's strange, Eve says as we clean up the lab. When you first transferred to our school, I thought you were just another tough guy with an attitude. Now I realize there's a lot more beneath the surface. Most people don't look beneath the surface, I reply, packing my notes into my backpack. Their loss, she says simply. There's something refreshing about Eve's directness, her intellectual curiosity that extends beyond textbooks to the world around her. In another life, I might have shared my knowledge of her secret identity, formed an alliance based on mutual understanding of what it means to harbor extraordinary abilities. But in this life, with its complex web of secrets and survival imperatives, I need to maintain certain boundaries, even as others begin to blur. As I prepare to leave, Eve walks me to the door. The setting sun casts long shadows across her front yard, painting the world in amber and gold. Same time next weekend? She asks. For the project and the other research. I nod. I'd like that. She hesitates, then adds, you know, there's a physics lecture at the university next Friday evening. On quantum entanglement. Might be relevant to understanding energy transfer principles. Sounds interesting, I say. We could grab dinner before, if you want. A smile touches her lips. I'd like that. Dash 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 dash. Author note: hello everyone. I hope you all enjoyed this chapter. So, Eve and Megumi are becoming better friends. I haven't decided yet if I want to make them together. Something I heard that sounds weird, but also interesting is that in this for robot to be a female originally, and create a female body, maybe Eve clone body, the whole monster girl situation being replaced by Sukuna. It's weird, but oddly fitting since they are then both not in their original bodies, and a female robot's personality fits with Sukuna's side part of Megumi. I'm still not sure of this though, so do tell me what you think of it. Well, I hope to see you all later. Bye.